Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his troops have recaptured more than 2,000 square miles of territory from Russian control, possibly indicating a turning point in the months-long war. Mark Montgomery is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So how significant is this Ukrainian counteroffensive? And is it a turning point in what some had called a standstill?
So it is significant. It certainly doesn't mean it's the end of the conflict, and I wouldn't assume that there isn't going to be significant Russian response over the next few weeks and months. But you know what they've achieved is a real positive sign about the effectiveness and the comprehensive planning that the Ukrainian military can do when given time and resources such as they've gotten from the United States and NATO.
Well, the quick success clearly came as a surprise to Russian troops who retreated very quickly. They seem to not have very good intel, and they continually underestimate Ukraine's capabilities.
They do. They underestimated them on February 24th, and they continue to do so. I think the real surprise here is the lack of response from President Putin. And what I mean by that is he's had the same Minister of Defense and the same Chairman of the Chief of the General Staff for more than a decade. These two individuals were responsible for the poor condition of the Russian army in February, their inability to conduct large-scale maneuver warfare, and they are responsible for their inability to prevent this offensive now. Yet Putin has not fired either of those senior officials.
So what do you think Putin is likely to do? I mean, I know it's hard to get into his head.
You know, obviously he has some pretty significant, catastrophic weapons he could use, nuclear weapons, chemical weapons. But I think it's more likely he's going to use targeted cruise missile attacks on civilian infrastructure. And I know it appears he's been doing that already, but really what's happened in the past is they fired 3,500 or so cruise and ballistic missiles, 70% of which have hit their targets. The other 30% have created civilian, collateral damage. I think now the 70% of them are going to be, that 70% is going to be hitting critical infrastructure, hospitals, electrical power grids, water distribution systems. His goal here is effectively terrorism, right? Trying to cow the Ukrainians into ceasing their offensive. That which would tell me, I think he's going to do that, and yet I think it'll have no impact. The Ukrainians have shown such resilience as a country and their president as a leader that I don't think this will have an impact, but I do think it's the most likely Russian next step.
American defense officials say that the U.S. will continue to support Ukraine. What role should the U.S. be playing right now?
Well, first of all, the Biden administration has done a terrific job. The packages of arms have been, have been the right arms delivered at the right pace. The U.S.-European Command's coordination of logistics has been fantastic. But really, the weapons that have mattered have been the artillery weapons, both the M177 artillery with the 155 millimeter rounds, but also the HIMARS systems with their GMLRS or guided missile launcher rocket system. Those two elements together, both a short range and a medium range artillery, have been consequential in allowing them to first blunt the Russian offensive and now lead a counteroffensive.
Well, the territory that was taken back was in the northeast. What is Ukraine likely to face in the southern part of the country?
Look, that's a great point. It's the southern campaign that I think is most important. They really do eventually need to take back Kherson, to take back what was lost coming right, just west of Crimea. They need to get themselves a better buffer to Odessa. Right now, the only buffer is the town of Nikolaev, where they did a fantastic job blunting the Russians 3 months ago. But it really is a flat piece of plain that you can drive through very rapidly. So they need more depth there. So they need to push the Russians all the way back to Crimea. I know it has to be a Ukrainian objective to eventually take back Crimea. But realistically, for this fall, it's push the Russians back into Crimea proper so that they have some depth to their defense of their south in Odessa.
And Mark, do you think that these territorial gains will be permanent? Like, will Ukrainian troops be able to hold on to control of those areas?
Well, I'm sure Russia thought their territorial gains, in February and March were permanent, but obviously they weren't. And so, my gut belief is that this is still a fairly flexible battlefield, and the Ukrainians may want to step back to more defensible positions in any case for the winter. So I don't think the lines we're at right now are the final lines, and I think it may be by Ukrainian choice or by Russian action.
Is there any indication that the Russian military has learned from its earlier mistakes in executing the war, the problems they had with logistics, the problems they had with intelligence?
I am surprised about what happened in the north and east and the Donbass regions, only because they had such shorter lines of communication than they had in February, March, April. That was what a lot of us thought. Well, it turns out that they couldn't conduct maneuver warfare at distance at 300-400 kilometers. But here they were with very short lines of communication, very tight command and control networks, and yet they've still been pushed around fairly easily. So I think the short answer is no, they haven't learned anything.
All right, Mark, we appreciate you coming on the program and discussing this with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.